Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. We're back at a Third Wheel Podcast studio. You might be seeing me switching between my studio, the Union in downtown Seattle, and here at University District, Third Wheel. Both are also podcast studios if any of you guys are looking to record a podcast just like me. So don't hesitate to reach out. Today, my guest is he's a hip-hop producer and a hip-hop artist. And he's about to, have you released it yet, your new project on vinyl?
So this is an older project that we're re-releasing on vinyl, but yeah, we're getting ready to drop it soon.
Hell yeah.
Within the next 20 or so days. It's a 30-day campaign.
Hell yeah, there
that
we
we're
go.
doing.
So vinyl used to be like the main thing for albums. So what do you think changed to the point, like now it's actually kind of like something special to do versus it being like the way you just had to do it before?
I don't know. I think like there's a couple different artists that might have set the precedent, but when you understand how vinyl works, especially in conjunction with the streaming model, which is streaming model leaves a lot to be desired. You know what I'm saying? But like I think vinyl became viable again when certain artists within my realm figured out that a little bit goes a long way.
Yeah.
So if you do basic supply and demand with vinyls, even if you do limited runs of vinyls at a decent price, you're able to get a lot more than your streams. And, it's just it's dope to hold the music in your hand. A lot of times people need tangible music, and it's even cooler to see it go from the mind to the hand.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
It's like the 1,000 fan model,
I follow that 1,000,000%, and I'm glad you know what it is, because I tell people all the time, like, would you rather have 100,000 fair weather fans, or 100,000 like fans without jobs, without sources of income, or just 1,000 real fans on top of that are willing to just spend $10 a month?
Yeah, 100%.
And then you're set for a year. That's really what it's about. So
I also been thinking about like what would it take for. I always use this example, and some people get heated about it, but this is the only real example I can really think of. But like, do you know who Alex Jones is by any chance?
Yeah, of course, yo.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't follow Alex too deeply by any means, but
he's
like,
entertaining to say the least. Like as a form of entertainment. That's it,
Because he's been blocked from every social media, he solely uses his website
for supplements and shit.
And drive all his traffic there and blogging and everything. And I always think about like, what would it take for an artist to be able to live solely off their website?
Yeah.
But I guess you would need to build a fan base to begin with. Like he had a fan base, and
for sure
he was on radio, he was on TV, and he was able to bring it over there. But like, if you're an up and coming artist, I feel like maybe you have to be on social media so people know who you are, and then bring them to like, it's like how big do you have to be? Or can you start from like when you first start, you're like, I want to be an artist. Maybe you start handing out hand cards and I'm not hand cards, I mean business cards, and be like, check out my website.
So I used to do that a long time ago, right? Like I had like 2015, I went on Vistaprint, and I had these cards that just said "fuck you" with my website, right?
Yeah.
And this is like, I've never spoke about this before, but this is like, it has no idea what it is. People might see it and just be like, yo, what the fuck is this? And, at the time I was living in New York. So like a lot of this, one out of 5 people didn't react right to it. Like you pass it to them and they'll just be like, yo, fuck you. You know what I'm saying? But I think that it's hard to navigate social media. Like if it was up to me, I wouldn't have it. I try to use it very limited.
Yeah.
And I try to just not overdose my supporter base with too much content, because it gets really hard. I try to make it so that whenever I'm posting something, it's somewhat relevant to the music, but there are a couple artists that just as a fan that I've kind of like studied that are able to get around without social media, and it's a hard thing to do, but it just makes you think about the time before social media where like the good dope would have word of mouth. Like you have a project and you had to go and show it to a friend, and there are certain people out there, even though you might need social media, just keep releases in order.
Yeah.
But there's people out there who are able to maneuver without it somehow. And like, I'd hope to get to that level, but it takes a lot.
I was recently watching a documentary on DJ Drama and his come up. Like he like being like a mixtape DJ, it doesn't really hold the same value anymore, but it used to like, it got to a point in the early 2000s that like it scared record labels.
Oh, for sure.
Like there was, when was it? I'm going to completely butcher it. I want to say between 2005 and 2010, when DJ Drama was really coming up, one of the record labels like like what is it called? They like called up the who do they fuck? They basically called up the feds and said that DJ Drama was like illegally moving like CDs. Like
Oh yeah.
he was
They raided his shit.
yeah,
Hmm.
like so. And that's
I was
crazy to
watching,
think
hold
about
on,
that.
not even cut you off. I was watching Static Selector, right? Who's another DJ. He's from Boston, and he was talking about that era when they started cracking down. And Clinton Sparks used to run a website. This isn't like dry snitch or anything. It's like public record. But like he used to run a website called Mix Unit, which was like kind of like a bootlegging website. And Static Selector said when all of that shit went down, he called Clinton Sparks like, "Yo, what are you gonna do?" And he was like under the assumption they were tapping the phone. So he's like, "Well, about what?" Like, like, what are you gonna do? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like click. So yeah, shit was serious, yo. But the mixtape shit.
And that was word of mouth, you know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. But that's where it was at, because it was like there was an era before it got to Dat Piff. I remember when Dat Piff was revolutionary. It was brand new. You had Hot New Hip Hop. You had Dat Piff. You had a couple different ones. But back in the day, before all of those mixtapes got uploaded, we got all the Dipset mixtapes off the street, or LimeWire. Like somebody had to buy it off the street and upload it to LimeWire. You familiar with LimeWire?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that shit's crazy. Or like even Kevin Hart, like one way he became such a big touring act is that every show he'd like have people sign up to his email newsletter. Like things like that. I don't know if artists take that into consideration or not.
They should, yo, because it's like anytime that I feel like social media isn't getting a point across, you got to try to find another way. Like I maintain an email list and I try not to abuse it.
Yeah.
But I have one
Yeah.
on deck, just that I've collected over the last 6 or 7 years,
And if anyone's listening, please email me and don't DM. Like I'm not afraid to admit this. I just spent $400 to renew my website.
Yeah.
Like the domain, getting the business email back up.
How many years did you renew it for?
It's only every I only do it for every 2 years.
Yeah.
So like I first got in 2020, so now the time just came around to like renew it for another 2 years. And I'm like, I'm spending $400 every 2 years to have this website, and then people just feel like they can DM me.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on.
I feel you. Man, I feel you, bro. Cause it's like I have my domain, my knowwhatimean.org.
Yeah.
And I did like org to like let it stand out a little bit. And it's just sometimes it's just like I don't pay this amount of money per month to maintain this email, use it, it's official. And it's like, particular emails, that email helps me file music related shit. We could curse, right?
Yeah.
So it helps me file music related stuff. So I'm like, yo, if it's important, like please
you're like, can you swear?
email.
And then you censor yourself the next time.
But you know how it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see the requests, like your DM requests and stuff like that. And it's like for certain things, it's like, yo, just if you want that response, it's better off to email. There's no way I'm not gonna see the email.
Yeah.
I might not see the request, and if I do, it's like weeks later. But I am gonna see the email. You know what I'm saying?
I love that your website's your ad lib. That's great.
But the ad lib shit is just like that took a life of its own. It wasn't supposed to be all of that, and it just became that over time. Like most good things. Nicknames and all of that. You can't just be naming yourself a nickname, in my opinion.
So let's talk about your background and how you actually became Suede God. You know what I mean? So you're originally from New York, and just from even the first time listening, I could tell there were New York influences. I just didn't know if it was a thing where you were from Seattle and gathered New York influences, or if you were from New York and then came to Seattle with those influences. But
for sure, but then, that plus there's Seattle influences there too. I feel like a little bit I bridged the gap between the coasts, because I'll go back to the East Coast and it's like to some of my homies on the East Coast, I'm more of a West Coast underground rapper. Even though I do have those East Coast influences, there is an element of like that laid back like West Coast style that I've accumulated just while being here and like adapting to the pace over the last like 5 or so years, So yeah.
So what was it like growing up in New York, and what part? I've had like any hip hop fan right now, everyone's been obsessed with Griselda.
For sure.
I've had Jay Skis on, who's
you had Jay Skis on?
Yeah.
Fire.
Who if people don't know, Drumwork, which is Conway the Machine's record label. And then I've had Mitch Arizona, who is one of Jay Ski's like main producers.
Yeah, I've heard of Mitch Arizona for sure.
And I've been obsessed. I've been telling people I've been obsessed with the New York scene and the Chicago scene. So it's cool to see a New Yorker living in Seattle.
But let me tell you something about it. Like just the way that the city is set up. Those guys are from upstate.
Right.
So like Buffalo. Yeah, I've been to Buffalo. I used to have family there a long time ago. And we would go to Niagara Falls sometimes, and that's right on the border of Canada. And the upstate has that shit on lock. Because there's even people in Rochester, Buffalo, all the surrounding areas making like the golden age revivalist kind of stuff. And then the city, there's definitely a wave in the city. It's not as like traditional. It's a little bit more, I don't want to drop too many names, but like you ever heard of like Mike? Or like there's a lot of people who I could show you some shit later,
Okay,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But other than that, it's straight up drill shit.
Right,
You know,
right.
like the stuff that you hear like blaring out of people's cars and windows is a lot of drill stuff. Bronx, Brooklyn.
And do you like drill?
Yeah, I like drill. I mean, I enjoy drill. You know, it gives me a certain amount of energy. But like, even when the Chicago shit was coming up, like I'm
Yeah.
not too big on guns. You know, like part of that is like you lose people coming
Yeah.
up. You know, it's like it's a reality. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's one of those things where it's like as much as I love drill, it's kind of like and I'm not trying to like downplay anybody because they're telling their story, but it's just like you see the cycle. And like you get a little bit older and you just remember that like it's every generation, it's like, yo, the 16-year-olds are wilding out.
Yeah.
More so than the one before, you know? So it's like as much as I love drill, I understand that it is perpetuating like a lot of the violence between the young kids. And they're not really in a position to see. That's why I don't fault anybody. They're not in a position to see far enough to realize that it's a cycle. You know what I'm saying?
But do you think drill is different than like gangster rap? Like when older people are like
Yeah.
hip hop these days, do you think they're thinking of drill music, or do you think they're thinking of just
I
like
think
NWA? Like what do you think older
Yeah.
people are still thinking of?
Well, older people, I think they don't really understand what drill is. You know, like I think drill's been around long enough. It's been 10 years, you know, like the Chief Keef, Chicago Boom.
Bang bang.
Yeah, exactly. That was 2012, late 2011, 2012 that really like swept the world. And then it kept evolving. It goes to London. It comes back to the East Coast. And it's a whole new thing. So I feel like drill is just really about the energy.
Yeah.
In conjunction with the content, you know, whereas like NWA and Ice Cube, they could be talking about the same stuff, but it's like barbecue music. Like, you know,
Yeah.
we're cooking out, we're lifting weights in the front yard, we're doing stuff like that. Where drill is kind of like just turned up to the max. You know, the younger kids have a lot more energy.
And I wonder, maybe I feel like drill doesn't do as much sampling either.
Well,
you know what
now
I mean?
the new drill, a lot of the stuff like from the Bronx or like Shawnee Bin Laden, who's from Queens. And it's weird how samples work, right? Like, cause like as a producer, I don't like sampling anything that's like under 20 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
And now it's like you hear some of the samples and it's like, yo, this is new, but they're old to the younger kids. So you might hear like, you know, the new Cardi B, K Flock shit has Akon Belly Dancer sample.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But over a drill beat. And then you have like B Love sampling Mary J. Blige over a drill beat. So they're sampling, but they're not going, for them, they're going as far back to their childhood. That was like Mary J. Blige was their car seat music, you know? So now you got like My Everything, which has the singing, but the drill beat. It's interesting. I love it. Just like being like a sample based kind of like traditionalist, quote unquote producer. I love hearing the sample drill shit, you know? Shout out to Shawnee Bin Laden. He kind of was one of the first ones I've heard do that justice, you know?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I've been checking those guys out as well. Yeah, the Cardi B one was pretty dope too.
Yeah, yo, because like Akon Belly Dancer was a smash when it dropped, you know? So
on a more mainstream pop side, you even have Jack Harlow with his new the Glamorous song, you know? It's just completely no, it's called First Class and then sampling Glamorous by Fergie, you know?
Yeah, so that's what I mean by that. It's like those are newer songs for us, but it's been like 20 years, 15, 20 years. So they're like almost in the domain where you could get away with sampling them. Cause it's like, I'll go digging and I'll see an album and I'll be like, shit, this came out 3 years ago. These artists are still actively touring and I'm not trying to, you know, so that's like the way my moral code goes about. Everybody doesn't have that though. You know, so.
But what is cool too, I've seen a lot of older artists, like, who was it? I don't want to say that the Temptations. Who was it? Basically, was it the Temptations? Are the Temptations still alive?
All of those bands still kind of tour. And, you know, they do like little Vegas EQC. You might catch them at the EQC.
They've been working with maybe it is the Temptations. One of those older like 60s, 70s bands have been working with like hip hop artists as of lately. Like there's this one with Lucky Day. Yeah. And they just completely like remixed one of their old songs, but that band was still part of the record.
Yo, that's
which
fire,
I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Cause you know, with sampling, it's like, my beef about people completely like debating sampling or like blocking rapper samples, like when it was newer, you know, like Sting blocking "I'll Be Missing You" remix, you know, like I wouldn't know who Sting was until I heard that version first. Like every time you sample something, you're breathing new life into it. Yeah. You put in a whole nother generation on. Like I find all of these bands, 1970s Japan, 1980s France, all of this shit, just listening to music, digging for samples. And if it wasn't for sampling, you know, like I might not be giving them a Spotify play or even sometimes I find some shit, I'm like, oh, they got a Bandcamp, and I know I'm gonna sample it, so I buy the album
Yeah.
just to feel like I did something, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's actually a pretty good moral compass for
mhm.
that. But I also understand the perspective of, who was it? When Kanye sampled was it Shaka Khan? She
Yeah,
was like furious at first, you know.
mhm.
Like I understand how older artists, and when I say older artists, you know, like the,
Like Shaka Khan.
yeah, those types.
Yeah, respectfully.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Word.
They're like, first of all, we weren't really given many opportunities to share our voice, and then when we were, there was huge pay cuts where the record labels were making way more. Like, you think it's bad now,
Yeah.
you know, back then, like, we got shit money.
Yeah, they
you
got
know
pennies
what I
on
mean?
a dollar. And the crazy thing is, when you probably sample Shaka Khan, you don't have to go to Shaka Khan to ask. You could go above her head
Yeah.
and go to the label and be like, we have this amount of money. Let me clear through the fire. You
Yeah.
know, but I remember she performed it with Kanye at BET Awards.
Yeah.
You know, it was good to see that.
Hell yeah. So what part of New York did you grow up then?
East Harlem.
East Harlem. Okay.
Yeah, you know, I lived there about half my life, and then I moved to Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I lived there a solid 16 years, and then after that, going back and forth. Not 16 years isn't half my life. I'm pretty way younger than that. But yeah. So like go back and forth between there and Pennsylvania for a while.
Okay.
And then I settled in Seattle. Wasn't initially the plan. 5 or so years ago.
Interesting. So why the
Yeah.
move first to Pennsylvania? Just family stuff, or?
Yeah, so my mom had a house up there, and you know, I was kind of like not really on the right path
Okay.
where I was at, and I think we mutually agreed that it was better for me to spend some time out there. You know, so I finished my last 2 years of high school in
There we go.
Pennsylvania, you know, and then like entered the workforce out there, and it wasn't always working, so sometimes I went back to New York, then I'll go back to PA, but like I was constantly like in New York for the most part.
Would you say you're a New York artist then, or would you say you're a Seattle artist, or how do you describe that?
It's
for
hard,
you?
yo, because it's like Seattle was super formative to like where I'm at right now. And when I first got here, like trying to make sure I'm not stepping on anybody's toes or anything, I never out the gate try to claim Seattle. I
Yeah.
never try to be like, you know, I'm AJ Suede, I'm from Seattle, because you know I'm not from Seattle. But over time, the city started claiming me, which isn't an easy thing to do. You know, Seattle's not really, I never got frozen or anything like that because I've always known people out here, but Seattle at a time wasn't really the place for like outsiders. You know, you kind of had to know people. You kind of had to, everybody's really clicked up in my experience, you know? So,
No, I agree. And I grew up here.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like when I came over here, I kind of just try to do my thing, show love to the current scene, but kind of like be in my own lane, you know, not try to step on anybody's toes, try to claim I'm from somewhere that I'm not. And then over time, certain publications it got to the point that every single time somebody mentioned me as a Seattle rapper, I couldn't take the 30 seconds to be like, yeah, but I'm from here.
Yeah.
It got to the point that it just took a life of its own. And I was just like glad to be accepted by the city.
Got it.
You know, but like if it gets down to it, I'll always make the distinction to let people know where I'm from. But Seattle was super formative to me filling in the rest of the puzzle pieces I needed to make the music that I currently make now.
Hell yeah.
You know?
So you started making music originally in New York then?
Yeah, for sure. I've been making beats since I was like 12. Yo, my uncles were like trying to do the rap thing when I was younger, you know, like 11, 12, and they would let me run the boards, and like I was kind of in the environment of watching them make their mixtapes and, you know, let me sign the booth and, you know, run that back. I got to, you know, chop shit up. And so from early, I kind of always had it in my head that I wanted to do that. And so I was doing that since I was like 12 or so, you know, from Cakewalk to FL Studio, you know, to all of that stuff. So then, but at the time, it was like I started getting into rapping, just being a fan. You know, once I started figuring out that like I didn't have to like, because my main influence at the point was Dipset. And if you wasn't like them, you wasn't really getting any burn. Everybody was trying to rap like Dipset or Styles P, Jada Kiss, G-Unit. You know what I'm saying? That's what it was about. And I wasn't really on that type of time. So when I started finding people like Doom and like Cannibal Ox, Company Flow, I don't know if you're familiar with any of these people, Deltron.
I had Dell on the podcast.
You had Dell on the fucking podcast?
Yeah.
All right. See, pardon self, I got to go back and do my knowledge. But yeah, so, you know, once I started finding these people who I felt were more like me, I started seeing rap as a viable career choice. That there's outsider rap out there, you know, like it doesn't have to all be, even though there's a certain element of it to all my shit, it doesn't all have to be flashy. It could be introspective. It could be, you know, fringe. You could touch on like your interests. So that's kind of when I started taking it more seriously
Mm.
as to I want to do this, you know?
So it's more when you open like your music taste up versus,
Yeah.
do you think there were certain artists around you that also opened you up? Or do you think when you were coming up, a lot of the artists were trying to do the similar type of music?
Everybody was trying to do similar music. And it was only because we were in an era where I was earlier on it, on trying to go and search for music. Cause it was like, I was the type of kid that, you know, when you find the greatest song you ever heard, you want to find the next greatest song that you ever heard. You want to keep having that feeling of finding the greatest song you ever heard. So I'm just constantly looking for music and finding new music and, you know, looking at music from other regions because the shit was completely local at the time. Everything was word of mouth, physical mixtapes, like we were talking about before. So then, but I think my peers, like I was in a rap group with some of my friends, like we would just like, you know, battle rap and it wasn't anything too serious, but you know, like, you know, we're dreaming big, younger kids, oh yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. It wasn't really like people wanted to rap. I think that I wanted to rap also for the skill of it and to recreate that feeling of finding the best song that you heard. Whereas at the time, rightfully so, which I don't blame anybody, most people were concerned about the benefit of rapping, you know, like getting the hit. And I was always kind of able to meet people halfway on that, people that I rap with. But after a while, knowing the type of stuff that I wanted to make, I went off into my own lane. And started trying to like craft that because it was just not just at that time it started even not always being about hip-hop.
Right.
I was finding all types of new music. I was playing Rock Band 2, my skate video games and skate videos was putting me on all types of music. You know, so I was just trying to make good music.
Yeah, those skate soundtracks were legendary.
Insane.
For a lot of
life
artists.
changing, yo. Tony Hawk's talking about Dell. I found that Tony Hawk's Underground 2.
Oh shit.
You know, like they had Dell on there. They had all these people going to be some of my favorite artists, but I was fortunate enough to find a lot of that earlier than most.
Do you know Dell is Ice Cube's cousin?
Yeah.
Yeah, isn't that
crazy?
Shit?
Yeah, it's crazy because, you know, when you go into the first Dell album, there's Ice Cube influence there.
Yeah.
And then he started wilding out a little bit around the time of like No Need for Alarm and, you know what time it is.
Yeah. Fuck, Dell is legendary. He's starting to make a comeback too with his music.
He did an album with Kool Keith recently.
Yeah. Oh,
you
fuck, I still haven't checked that out.
I think Kool Keith just did the beats. He might rap on 1 or 2 songs, but it's mostly Kool Keith production and Dell rapping.
Yeah, it's cool. A lot of I'm slowly starting to see it. A lot of even older hip hop artists are making more of a comeback and working with the younger artists, which I'm excited to see.
They're not getting aged out anymore, and it's like it's a point now where it's like at a time only the Rolling Stones could tour for life. The Beatles could tour for life. Like our genre wasn't treating our OGs well, and it's like now that with the resurgence. Like, you know, shit comes in cycles, and I feel like their culture is so celebrated at the moment. Like, you know, if Wu-Tang could always tour. Wu-Tang's forever. You know, Nas could always tour. But now you're seeing people, Boot Camp, Click. You're seeing all these people who are coming up in that era having a resurgence because, like, that shit is back.
Yeah.
You know, like I would love a Pete Rock beat. You know, and for me to figure out what type of Pete Rock beat I would want in the future, I'm going to go back to my mom's CD of Mecca and the Soul Brother that I had in my car for years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Or like, I guess they've been popping up everywhere. Have you heard of that hip hop group called Coast Contra?
Yeah,
or
that's like Ras Kass's son.
Yeah, that's what I just found out the other day. I just hit up I had Ras on the podcast too.
You're killing it, bro.
Oh, thank you.
Ras was like my label mate for a quick second.
Really?
In an independent situation. We had the same Black House Records. They put out a couple Ras Kass physicals.
Yeah.
And they were doing shit like that for me as well, you know?
What I had his whole hip hop group. Fuck, what are they called?
Oh, with J57?
J57 and El Gon.
Shout outs to J57, bro.
What is that group called? Fuck.
They're gonna get mad if it's been a little while. It has something to do with alcohol.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Fuck, I forget what it's called.
Don't hate me, Jay.
But that's so cool. It's so dope. So like you came up and started meeting artists. So how do you know like J57?
So Black House, the same label that was doing the Ras Kass stuff.
And where was that out of?
Black House is based out of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Oh, wow.
So it's ran by like an older punk who loves hip hop, you know? So he just kind of reaches out. He puts out stuff for like Slug Christ, Father.
Okay.
You know Crime Wave from Tacoma? Plays an Extortionist. It's a metal band.
Oh, I
So they put out a lot of punk physicals, and then they were also handling El Gon and J57 and Ras Kass's physicals. And yo, I'm so mad I don't remember. Short-term memory, you know, Seattle got good kush. I'm so mad I don't remember the name of the group and shit. But through that, Scott, the guy who runs that label, I think indirectly put J57 onto me.
Oh, wow.
And he was liking some of the music, and he sent me a gang of beats. But at that time, I was super into my self-production, so I never got to really do anything with them. But, you know, if that offer still stands when the plate is clean, you know I got you, bro.
There we go. So tell me about I didn't know there were different types of record labels. Like the so break down the difference between like a record label where it's literally like a TDE where Kendrick signed to that.
Yeah, my homie runs the video department as of recent.
Hey, there we go.
Good friend of mine. So
and then having like a Crane City where they're actually releasing like vinyls for people. Like what is the difference, or are they kind of the same thing? Or
well, it's crazy because it's like, all right, so I could break down a distinction that's very case part of the case. So let's say that you have drum work, right?
Yeah.
Conway at that time was signing Griselda, right? But Conway can still use. So Crane City is like a label that produces physicals. They don't, you know, there's no masters involved. There's nothing. I'm pretty much licensing. That sounds very official because it's not like that, but I'm pretty much licensing my music to be made as a physical, and we're going to break bread together.
Got it.
Right? So Conway or drum work, from my observation, I don't know anybody personally, Conway can drop from a king to a god through Griselda and the distributor Empire, you know, and then have D-Rap Winkle, which is like a Crane City in the Netherlands, handle the physicals, you know, so it's separate. It's like on the digital side, we're releasing it this way through this label, but we can still partner up with a D-Rap Winkle or a Crane City or a Tough Kong, which handles some of those records, and put out the physicals, you know, so they work together. Whereas like digital distribution, being Spotify, the DSPs and stuff like that, might be handled through the digital distributor, but then you have Crane City, who is a physical label with a physical distributor like Fat Beats.
Got it.
There's a lot of layers to it, you know, but they work together. They're not mutually, depending on how you handle your business, they're not mutually exclusive.
But can anyone be part of Crane City then, or like any of those types of?
Yeah.
Got it.
Because, you know, if you think about like some of the artists that Crane City has releases through, none of us are really connected through another situation. Like we all know each other from being in the city. Like, you know, I know Perry for a long time.
Yeah.
I've known Duna Mal for a very long time, but they all have separate situations. Like for me, I have a label, you know what I mean, Incorporated, which is, you know, digitally distributed by, you know, a distributor whose name I won't say yet, but brand new, no releases on it yet. But then I can still work with Crane City whenever I want to put out a physical. And then there's still other vinyl labels that I work with too.
Got it.
Depending on like my Metatron's Cube was released by a label called Fake 4, and which I still handled it digitally, but they put out cassettes and CDs.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying?
I wonder if, because I would still kind of consider like a Griselda pretty niche with the type of music.
They kind of set this up though. Because it's like, all right, so the first thing, and you know, I'm just a student of the game, observationally hoping to own a label one day, hopefully hoping to, you know, use my influence to help release music, is like, so there's a label called, I believe it's called Dup Records, based in England, ran by a producer named The Purist, who works with Griselda.
Nice.
All of those early Griselda records were Griselda records, but they were released through Dup. So if you get like, I'm not going to say the word, H1 through 8, you get them through Dope Records, which is ran through
That's West Side Gun's project.
Exactly. You know, this with a word that I just don't want to mention for search optimization. Love the albums though. You already know what time it is. But Dope Records released all of those physicals strictly through Bandcamp. And their reputation is so big that it's like trying to get a raffle for Jordan sneakers. People, they say, we're dropping this at midnight. People get on the website and refresh it. A minute later, it's gone.
Yeah.
You know, and then you go on eBay a year later and you see the resale value because of the limit, and some of these records are $4,000 now.
Dang.
You know?
So do you think an example like any member of Griselda, without any merch or anything included, if it was just like from streaming versus records, do you think they make more money from vinyls than?
You make way more money from vinyls. And the thing about it is that when the vinyls travel the world and they reach new hands, some of those people might start streaming on top of that. They might not have the vinyl with them. So you could get them the physical. That's why, Spotify numbers could be really, really misleading sometimes, because it's like my Spotify can look popping and it's like it's not too much coming in off of those mechanical royalties, you know, but it's like every time you figure out who's willing to buy physicals, even if it's a smaller number, you know, like you talking about the 1,000 fan model. Yeah. Obviously I'm not at that level, but if you're somebody who's not a Griselda, if you could start off with 50 fans who are willing to spend $10, do the math. Even if you still have, like, you know, I still cook part-time a couple days a week, you know, but it's like, not currently, I'm gonna get back to it soon, but it's like anybody could do this shit. And because we've seen the model executed by certain people successfully, if you're a student of the game, you could figure out a way to make that work for you. So there's tons of younger dudes out here who are doing limited release shit.
Got it.
You know, you ever heard of Makami?
Yeah, he's dope.
So Makami will drop a vinyl. This is the first time I've ever seen it. Not even a vinyl. Makami dropped an album 4 or 5 years ago that was $70 for the digital, and you couldn't even stream it. But the track list was stacked, so people bought it. And it's like, if you're selling something for $77, you know, there's a debate whether certain people might think it's price gouging. But if you have confidence enough to have zero social media, but put that type of respect on yourself,
yeah,
and you could sell 10, 70, he sold way more than that, let's be clear, you know, but if you could sell 10 digital at $77, you better feel good about yourself.
Yeah.
You got 10 people out there, you know, willing to drop $77 of their hard-earned money on a digital piece of work.
Yeah.
Changes the game, yo.
And I guess that's why I still don't know much about it, but I think that's why people are looking towards like NFTs for artists as well. You know?
Yeah.
Do you have any take on NFTs yet? I haven't done enough research, to be honest.
There are people who try to get me to do NFTs from time to time, but it's like I'm kind of having a hard time backing it, you know, and I might not be in the loop. This is the reason why I don't shit on it, because, you know, there's always new ways of getting stuff, and there's always new ways of trying to, like, you know, but I can't, just something about it, I don't really feel 100% comfortable about NFTs yet. And it's like, it's not even about the NFT itself. It's just the whole market of crypto is changing.
Yeah.
It's going up and down. It's fluctuating. I don't necessarily understand it, you know, and I do my due diligence. I spent a good amount of time. I try to get on it early when I had extra time on my hands during the pandemic. I try to learn as much as I could. There's certain people I've seen who appear to be successful. You catch the keyword? Yeah. But I don't necessarily know if I'm ready to get on board yet.
Yeah, very fair. That's a very, very fair statement.
Doesn't mean I'm right though, but
right.
Yeah.
So what convinced you to eventually move to Seattle? Like what brought you here to Seattle, and what made you stay in Seattle?
So I came up here. I've known people, just like doing my thing for a while. I've known people in little pockets all over, and there's tons of people I knew in Seattle from the Thrax House era. You remember Thrax House? Mm-mm. So Thrax House, I'll give a little bit of history real quick if you don't mind. Yeah. So Thrax House was a Seattle-based group, a collective, if you will, that from Thrax House came. Well, Thrax House was founded by Kenayada and Magnet. Okay. You know what I'm saying? A lot of what Thrax House went on to become, the main members of Thrax House began to prioritize GBC. Okay. So every member of GBC was Thrax House at a time. I'm part of a group called UDF, which is a Seattle group, which also had ties with Thrax House. It was like one big Seattle umbrella. So within UDF, you had Dizzy Slick, Free Dizzy Slick, Baby Son, another member of Thrax House.
Wait, so was Kenayada doing Raider Clan also, or is this after Raider Clan?
This is after Raider Clan.
Okay,
you know, so I kind of go back to those times a little bit too. But this was after Raider Clan, when Sesh kind of started popping up. You know, Chris Travis and Xavier Wolf. Sorry if I'm mentioning too many names, but I'm a historian.
Yeah, there we go.
As well, you know, but
I love that.
And a primary source too for a lot of it. But Raider Clan was there was a lot of members in Raider Clan. Raider Clan had a chapter in almost every major city. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And after a time, like Thrax House, which also had a lot of members, certain artists went on to go do certain things, rightfully so. Key started Thrax House, which I do believe with Ned and Nedarb. Okay. If you're familiar with Nedarb. UDF has members who are also members of Thrax House. And then there was GBC, which was also another pocket of Thrax House. You know, so Horsehead was another founder. Jay aka Coldy, you know, all of these people, you know, and Fishnark. You know what I'm saying? I've never heard of him. Wow. Yeah, so we were all under.
You guys sent me like a whole list, by the way. So I can look
there's
at
a tree.
People.
It's really crazy. It's a really crazy tree. But you know, I became part of Thrax House towards the tail end.
Got it.
Of Thrax House. You know, so GBC was becoming a priority. You know, it was killing it. You know, it was really, those members they carved a niche of a very particular type of music. You know, and so I knew all of those people, but I also had homies within the city, right? Like my friend Wolftone, who let me stay on his couch. So I came out here to do a short run of shows, then go to Vancouver, then go to Victoria, and I had no plan. I was gonna try my hand at LA. Right. You know what I'm saying? After that little run, I came back to Seattle, chill for a little while.
And how old were you around this time?
I was 22, first time I visited Seattle. I'm 28 now. And I liked it a lot. You know, I felt like I learned a lot about the city, and you start to understand that there was a weird discourse between people who played a lot of shows within the city, but didn't have so much of a presence on social media,
Right.
but like were actively playing shows and being career musicians, you
Mhm.
know? And then the inverse,
Yeah.
people who were extremely popping online, but played shows in Seattle every once in a while. So I kind of was able to easily float between those people because I knew both, you know?
Mhm.
So long story short, that run was done. LA didn't seem like a viable option, you know? I'll go home for a little while. I'll go home for about 6 months. At this time, I'm living in Pennsylvania with my
Okay.
parents and shit. But going to New York every once in a while, going to shows, still messing with some of my New York peoples musically. And then I'm like, I'm going to give it a shot again. I'm going to come to Seattle for another month.
Mhm.
I'm going to try to go to LA. Long story short, for legal reasons, I won't say, one of my friends was in LA, had to, you know, he went on the run, came back to Seattle. That kind of collapsed. I didn't really, if I would have went to LA, I would have been bumming it.
Right.
Whereas like I was in Seattle with people I knew who, you know, also messed with me. I had guaranteed couch for a couple months. I was just trying to figure it out. I didn't feel like I had too much going for me, like at the time where I was at, you know, like I felt like I kind of hit a ceiling and I needed to like travel, meet new people, taking different types of influences. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? So I'm in Seattle with the money I saved up. Before that, I was working at a place. I was doing temp work and I was working at an aeronautics facility.
What's aeronautics?
They were building airplanes, but assembly
Oh.
line style.
Okay.
So I'd sit in the basement with like a bunch of knives and files, filing parts, washing metal pieces, bring it onto the. They were building nukes in that shit. Control. Or yo, it
Jeez.
was crazy though. But it was at a crazy time in Pennsylvania. The elections was going on. Trump had just won, so there was a ton of like rednecks feeling really bold and empowered, you know. And you know, I felt like I was gonna catch a case.
Hmm.
You know, there was fools in there talking about building walls, doing all types of shit that I don't, you know, that I definitely don't fuck with.
Like your coworkers, what you're saying?
Yeah,
Got it.
really slick, feeling really bold, really empowered, you know, and it's like, you know, real Second Amendment, abortion hating, gun toting people, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then coincidentally around that time, I was just like, you know, I got no love for this job. I'm gonna get as much money as I possibly can.
Mhm.
And I came to Seattle on the one way the day before Trump got inaugurated. This is just for time.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not, you know, the result of each other. So I'm here. Eventually I run out of that money. I didn't budget right. You
Mhm.
know, like shows weren't going the way I planned. Didn't really budget right. I got a job at a pizza shop, which I won't mention, you know, because they started off being a pure company and then they got super capitalistic, went public. We might know who I'm talking about. Started in Seattle.
Really? There's pizza shops that started. I have to do some research.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a Subway now.
What? And it
Yeah.
started in Seattle?
Yeah, yeah. You know, there's one in University District.
Oh shit.
See if you could think without saying it.
Okay.
But so then yeah, you know, I got to the point that I was able to get some of that money back, saved up. My friends are still gracious enough to let me be on their couch. Summer rolls around and I'm like, shit, should I stay or should I go?
Mm.
But then I got offered a sublet.
Mm.
Somebody that we knew mutually was like, I'm going out of town for the summer. I'm going to Burning Man. I need somebody to sublet my apartment. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
was like, you know, I feel like I overstood my welcome here. I can't do the couch thing forever. So, you know, I had a little bit of stability.
Yeah.
You know, a little bit of autonomy. I got the sublet. After that, I was like, once again, should I go? Should I stay?
Mhm.
Then a room opens up. Another musician I know. It's like, yeah, you could, you know, 6-month deal. I just kept finding new places
Yeah.
and I just kept having more opportunities. And I just kind of felt like I needed to go where the love was at. Not saying there wasn't love anywhere else, but
Yeah.
I just had a good thing going that over time, it just kind of became a really good place for me to make music. You know, it's like the pace was really chill. It's not, you know, the everyday seeing 1,000 people in New York
Mhm.
or seeing the 5 people a week in Pennsylvania. That's an exaggeration, you
Yeah,
know, but
yeah.
I was able to meet somewhere in the middle where I feel like I can go for walks and write. I could, you know, I enjoy the weather, which is unpopular opinion out here, you know, but I just overall, Seattle became home.
Yeah.
You know, and I still try to go home to New York every 4 months at that time. I would go as much as I possibly could, you
Mhm.
know, and then the pandemic just took another 2 years
Yeah.
away from us out of nowhere. So, you know, like 2
Yeah.
years later, less trips home, even though I came over there as much as I could. And then, you know, just here we are now. It's just all that time, just a really great place for me to make music. And I was able to just stay in the lab, stay focused, avoid distractions. Minimum wage was higher. I was able to get a little bit of money, you know, and just take care of myself. So it was the most viable step for me.
And was your family nervous when you decided you wanted to move to Seattle?
Shit, you know, there's always like a little element of guilt,
Mm.
you know, because sometimes I gotta miss birthdays. I missed a couple funerals,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, you know, I'm sure it affects my family in a way early on, but over time, when you start seeing what came of the focus that came from the move,
Mm.
they understand, you know, and like I hold up my end of the bargain by trying to go home as much as possible. But they know what time it is. At first, people would have been a little bit unsure. Like you get like, oh, you still making music? You
Yeah.
still like that type of shit. Like, you know, I'm sure when you started, you'd be like, oh, you still doing the podcast
Yeah.
thing?
100%.
Until it gets to the point that it's an undeniable thing where it gets to how's the podcast going?
Yeah.
How's the music going? You know, and
Yeah.
then so yeah, at first, you know, there's that element, but I make of guilt that comes with being away sometimes, but I make up for it by not fucking around.
Mm.
There's certain days where if I'm like sad that I missed a birthday or something like that, I'm going straight into the studio. I'm like, I'm not this far to be fucking around.
Mm.
So that's kind of one of the things that keeps me driven.
And is your studio, do you go to a studio? Do you have like a home studio?
Home
Or
studio.
That's dope.
Yeah, but you know, so my new spot that I live in, there's constant construction
Oh, yeah.
going on. So it kind of limits it. But my prior spot, zero noise ordinance, high ceiling, best natural reverb, wilding out. You know, and like you go have these little periods of not recording that when you're finally able to record comfortably,
Yeah.
why the fuck else would I want to do anything other than record?
Yeah.
That's where I have the most fun, you know? So
That's dope. Are there any connections between New York and Seattle that you see? Or do you think Seattle and New York are just total different
fucking
cities?
polar,
Really?
you know? But I think they each have what each other is missing.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like they're both great and they're like, you know, I love New York. You know, don't get me wrong. I also love Seattle. They're two. When I was home, I went home for a minute, like a month or so ago. I want just one-way ticket just to spend mad time with my family. You know what I'm saying? And I was out there for a couple weeks. And just the one thing that Seattle's missing that New York has is the accessibility to corner stores and food.
Yeah.
You know, I just go downstairs. I was eating so much just because I could.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's in that you could still eat for $7.
Yeah.
You get a meal for $7 and be satisfied. Whereas, like, just the thing about New York, just the pace and the hustle, like, I always have that with me. And I think that's why my pace is like that, but sometimes it could be a lot.
Yeah.
You know, for me, like, sometimes I just want to be able to walk down the street and be the only one on the street.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Whereas you'll never get that. There's always something out the window. That's part of New York's charm, though. You know, there's always music blasting. There's always noise. There's always just people outside. There's a lot of, you know, with some of the bad that might come, there's a lot of love. There's a lot of people in the neighborhood, you know, for a lifetime, just because they seen you grow up. You know, like, they know your family. They know your grandmother. They know your aunt. Like, my whole family's from that area, you know? So I couldn't even get in trouble without somebody telling my mom.
Mm.
I couldn't fucking spray a spray can without somebody possibly seeing me. You know, I couldn't do, you know, so that's how it is. It's like one of those, like, you know, for better and worse, it's like one of those villages that raises a child.
Yeah.
So much, like, you see so many different people, you know, like, so yeah, I'm grateful to be a part of both. Whereas when I came over here, you know, I got to learn the culture over time. It was a lot different, but the pace suited me.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I just really love the pace of Seattle.
I went to New York for the first time like a month ago too, and I feel like almost New York's pace suited me.
Word.
You know what I mean? Like,
but it's the opposite. Yo, that's the thing though. You know, like, you might need that.
Yeah, that's very true. And I like that things are open like 24/7. Like the first night I was there, I was up until like 5 a.m.
Yeah, still drinking.
Yeah, and I had flown in at like 6 a.m.
Yeah.
So then I didn't sleep on the flights. I was there. I was up for like 24 hours basically.
Word.
And I felt amazing the entire time though.
That's good. Yo, I tell people that shit too, because it's like, people ask me like, yo, how come you don't feel like living in New York? It's like, yo, I've lived there for so fucking long. You know that, like, but I think people do need to go live there.
Yeah.
You know, like, one of my younger homies who used to help me with my videos, he's from Bremerton. Eventually, I met him at my job, you know, and I figured out he was fucking with cameras and shit. Eventually moved to Seattle, but he made a move to New York. And I'm like, yo, that's good. That's going to pick up your pace. You know, you're going to you see 1,000 people doing well.
Yeah.
By default, it makes you want to do well.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a necessary move for a lot of people. And, you know, all the times that I've even considered LA, it's like I don't think that you get that same amount of hustle and bustle from LA. I'm sure it's still laid back to a certain extent, but you just see like more celebrities or something. Should just be feeling too Hollywood sometimes. Like I want to go, but like
Right.
I don't feel like there's lasting connections like the way when I was in Seattle. Like some of these people I met, I do feel like they're friends,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just like Hollywood. Like yo, we should hang out sometime.
Yeah.
Never do.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you feel like your hustle has probably like inspired some other artists that you know here
I
in
hope
Seattle?
so. I hope so. You know, because like I mean, every once in a while somebody might tell me that it does, and it's indirectly. It's not like I just want to see Seattle as a whole. Like everybody doesn't have to have my pace and frequency, but if everybody just stood in the lab, you know how it is. Shit could get every once in a while, every like once a year. There's like a petty war in the scene.
Yeah.
You know, where like everybody's kind of trying to like I'm gonna say rightfully so, remind people why they're the shit. It's a game where it's like you kind of gotta remember what you gotta big yourself up, and it's like the type of shit people big themselves up, people instigate, people get, and it's like yo, if you bypass all of that shit by like just being in the lab all the fucking time, we could all be great.
Mm-hmm.
The whole city can have a light shine on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? But like, yeah, so I hope some of my friends I know who are super talented. Sometimes every once in a while they'll tell me like, yeah, the way you moving, like it makes me want to get in the lab. So it's just like, good, stay there.
Yeah.
Flood them.
Do you that's a good point. Do you feel like Seattle has rubbed off on you though? Like how you act towards people?
Yeah, for sure. You could tell when I go home. I think Seattle gives you the space to be a little bit more introverted.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like I'm a lot when I go home, hang out with my friends, I do feel I'm a little quieter.
Mm-hmm.
I like to listen more. I think that Seattle taught me how to listen better. And I think that it has rubbed off on me. I'm not gonna like freeze anybody or anything, but I really am about my people and my clique more so. Like I don't really feel like I have like the energy to just be out as outgoing as I was. I enjoy the quiet a little bit more. I like the rain. I like all of that type of shit. But also there's still that element where it's like I'm too New York for people out here sometimes. Not even New York. I'm just too East Coast for people sometimes. My directness might fuck people up sometimes.
Yeah,
they might
that.
misconstrue it.
Yeah.
Whereas like, it's never really anything personal with me, but yeah, there's definitely an influence. You could hear it in the music. Yo, Seattle's been a good influence. It's always good to have the contrast and to just try to meet myself somewhere in the middle of that contrast,
Yeah. So do you think people recognize that you're probably from the East Coast when like they first meet you?
Oh yeah, easily. It's like, sometimes when I first got here, I lost my accent a little bit, but like people wouldn't really understand me.
Oh wow.
Like not even like people I was around when I started like being in the workforce and shit. And having to deal with like the everyday Seattleite that wasn't like a creative, like the normal. I go to work and I go back home and take care of the kids Seattleite. Like I'll ask them like a customer service related question, and they just be like, "Huh?" You know what I'm saying? But like, yeah, they do. Off the bat, a lot of times I'll say a certain word. I'll say like straw or like sauce or some shit like that, and people will be like, "Oh, you're from the East Coast," and it's just like, yeah, But It's funny though because I picked that up too when I got here, like the inverse that there is a Seattle accent.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow, what is it? Just like
shit, like it depends because it's widespread. I feel like if you break it down between certain parts of the city, but like every once in a while you ever heard somebody say like you got a plastic bag?
Oh, I hate that shit. Yeah.
Like one of those things. The way that certain R's, like people pronounce their R's really fully, like the whole R is pronounced. Like you know what I'm saying? But there is there's an inflection.
That's funny.
There's definitely an inflection, and it's like a lot of times it's proper English, but it got its own thing to it.
I thought people have said that Seattle sounds like the most just normal, basic.
Yeah, that's what I mean by
voice.
say proper English, but there's still inflections that you're only gonna get in Seattle.
That's so
what
funny.
I'm saying? Just based on my observation,
So as someone who's in hip hop and has worked normal jobs, do you feel like you've had to ever like code switch when going into like the workforce?
Nah, the key is to find a job that's gonna let you be as you as possible. But you just gotta maintain the element of respect.
Yeah.
Be like, and I think that being like a cook that's heavily tattooed,
yeah,
you kind of know what you're signing up for at the interview. And there's a lot of times that people might get taken aback, like older people I work with, because it's like you might think you know me from seeing me, but I was like, raised by good people.
Yeah.
So I treat my elders well in the workforce. I have my, so it's a matter of finding the point where you don't have to switch anything. I kind of just go into everything with the same even demeanor.
Yeah.
I might turn it up a little bit when I'm with people I've known for a long time, but like the type of jobs I work, you kind of already know what time it is when I'm coming for the interview.
Yeah, I wonder if code switching at jobs or something can take away from someone's creative
process. Yeah, I think 100%. So when I used to work retail back in the day, I've had tattoos forever, right? And I worked for the Gap for a second. I took a shot at community college for a little bit. It didn't really pan out, right?
Yeah.
But I had it set up that I came and did stock at the Gap at 6 a.m. And then by the time I got off, I had 2 classes right after. And they were all, long sleeves if you have tattoos, even if it's burning up. And, I started working for Adidas for a little while after that. And they were just kind of like, oh, we don't have those problems here. Just do you, be you to help sell the product in a way. You know what I mean? You identify with certain customers, you identify their needs. Certain customers might relate to you because you're you.
Yeah.
Somebody might walk into the store and feel more comfortable talking to you because you're you than they feel talking to me.
Yeah.
And I learned that early, so then for a while, I was at that Adidas up in Pennsylvania, and then I transferred to the flagship in Soho for a minute.
Nice.
And they were even more wild. There was like 200 people on staff, and everybody was just a diverse fucking character, and it was lit. We all kicked it with each other after work. We all did shit together, and then after a while, I wanted to be like closer to like my family and shit and some of my friends, so I went back to the other store, and then I was there. They were still on that type of time, but the manager ends up going to Polo and takes all the fire employees with her to Polo. Yeah. Me included. And it was back to that cover up your tattoo shit and and there's a noticeable effect in the mood when you have to do that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I think that from that point, I was able to work so many. After that, I got into doing like factory work, manual labor type of work, manufacturing, forklifting, all of that, where that's not really an issue because you don't deal with customers. But then by the time I got into cooking, knowing how many jobs and how many types of jobs and how many types of coworkers I didn't want to fucking deal with, that's the only option. Whereas like I get to have that flexibility, be me, and cooking's an art. I get to still be creative.
How'd you know you could become a cook?
Well, I didn't, well, the thing is I did though. Cause like my dad
chefing up beats, right?
Exactly. But the thing is, it's all the same. It's like playing the drums where you got to put your mind in a bunch of different places at once. But like cooking is one of those things where you learn the recipes, but the rest of it comes from the heart. You know what I'm saying? And like my grandmother that passed away a couple years ago, she's from the South, just has that history of being, a Black woman in America in those times and, passing down recipes and traditions. And, it's just one of those things where it's in you, it's not on you. So, but cooking won't let you get into it unless you're already a cook. You try to get into it, there's no real entry level way of like, you want to apply for something, it's like you already need 2 years of experience. Yeah. So you kind of got to find a way to get in. Yeah. And I got in with pizza, which led to me doing barbecue, which led to me doing other shit, and then you continuously build a resume. And that's why it's like, I don't care if I work fucking 3 days a week. The rest is on me. I could take this is like a trade. I could take this anywhere. Yeah. I could have all the tattoos, face, neck, hands, and I don't have to deal with too many people. I just need to be good at my skill. And, that's where it's at. That's how you become a cook. You get hit with a lot of pressure. Yeah. You get hit, like, you have to learn who you are under pressure in anything you do.
There's a lot of, like, chefs in the music scene here in Seattle especially.
Learned that. And that was another thing that kind of kept me in Seattle because it's like, at that time, my homie Wolf, who I was staying on his couch, plays in a lot of bands. And also my homie Zach, who also lived in a house. Tons of bands in the city, punk, metal, power violence, all of that shit. And then, you start learning some of the bands on that side. Yeah. We're going out to certain bars. You'd be like, oh yeah, that's the drummer from Un, or that's, and it's just like, yo, all these musicians are really out here. And then you start figuring out, cause that's where you get the flexibility. Yeah. You know what I mean? I come in, I do my job while you got me, but after I leave, it's just, I'm gone. Yeah. We
got Greg. I think Greg's
a cook. Yeah, right.
Jake the Digital, he's a cook. On the water now, like that's cool to see.
It's a good thing, because it's like it really is good for musicians, and it's like if you really want to be creative and you could deal with pressure, go for it.
And so, how much between like working like as a cook and an artist, what do you think like the percentage is? Like, do you think you're almost full time as an artist, or do you still feel like you need cooking, or how does that work?
Well, I
for
think
you?
I'm always full time as an artist,
Got it.
because even it's like if I was doing my 20 to 25 hours of cooking, which
Yeah.
is generally what it is, there's less sleep involved everywhere else,
Mhm.
because it's like on top of that, I got to try to maintain being a good friend and being good to all my people that are around me. It could be hard, but it results with, at this current moment where it's like shit is stacked, there's not as much time to chill outside the means of creating. Most of my friends like that I fuck with do something creative in one way or another. So it's like if you're my homie that shoots videos and you want to chill, we're gonna shoot a video
Yeah.
and chill in the midst of chilling.
Right.
One of my friends who makes beats, this is how we're gonna chill. And I have a hard time chilling outside the context of that.
Yeah.
I realize, like, I feel like I constantly have to be doing something, and that maybe goes back to when I was saying, like, I'm not out here to really fuck around. I like to still smoke, drink, do my thing, but we got to be in the middle of something.
Yeah. I think that's fair, but I also feel like it was so funny. I was at this like family friend party over the weekend, and I was a little buzzed. I was having a good time, and I randomly start talking to this guy who's a lawyer, and I'm like, wow, being a lawyer must be hard work, and your mind's probably always racing on like your clients and what's next.
Yeah.
Like I'm just trying to figure out how, I was like to him, I was like, I'm trying to figure out how to set at least an hour a day aside just to like calm my mind, right?
Yeah.
And then a few weeks ago, he didn't know that I had this Catholic experience which I hated. I went to a Catholic church and I was like, what the fuck is going on here, right?
My family, I had a communion.
Catholic church is craziness. No offense.
Yeah, no, it's all good. No, I'm not Catholic. I'm not Christian. I'm not,
And so I had actually made fun of the Catholic Church on the podcast a few episodes ago.
Good.
And and basically, little did he know I had made fun of the church, and little did I know that he was in the church currently.
Yeah.
Right. So we're just talking about like life and how to like calm our minds, and he's like, you know what really worked for me? And he starts trying to convert me to be a Catholic. I was like, oh hell no.
It's like after you went out drinking all Saturday night, you want me to come and sit next to you in this church?
Yeah,
like,
you know
come
what I
on,
mean?
yo.
But I'd like to find something and I think everyone has to find it in their own way. I don't think it has to be meditation to the point of everyone thinks maybe like yoga or
I play
church.
video games.
Okay,
in between, but I play like a lot of like, like Skyrim, like shit that you can do at your own pace. It's a bit meditative, you know?
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, I think every once in a while I do put down an hour. Like, I play tons of Yu-Gi-Oh. Shout outs to Blake Anthony playing Yu-Gi-Oh too. You know what I'm saying? But
Wait, how do you play Yu-Gi-Oh? Like just the cards, or is there a game?
It's online now. They have it on. I got a Switch, so they have it cross-platform. You got computer, you got whatever. So we play online.
Does it look like Pokemon, or does it look like Texas Hold'em, where you're just switching the cards?
It's more comparable to Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
Which started in Seattle, as we all know. Wizards of the Coast, Seattle company.
Oh, I had no idea that started in Seattle.
So it's a little bit comparable to Magic the Gathering. You ever watch a TV show back in the day, Yu-Gi-Oh, the anime?
Yeah.
So it's like that. You draw a couple cards, but it's like one of the craziest. It's like chess.
So it's like turn-based type.
For sure, but it's literally like chess on crack. You gotta do like, how when you play chess, you sitting here the amount of steps that you gotta try to think ahead.
Yeah.
All of those games are really good exercises for the mind. And I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh is like one of those things that improves brain elasticity.
Yeah. While
at the same time, I get to deal with a lot of words and do a lot of reading. So that's good as somebody who works with words.
Yeah.
So I think that's been good for me. It kept me sane during the pandemic, playing games and shit. You
should be a spokesperson for Yu-Gi-Oh. That'd be pretty dope.
It'll be crazy though, because if I'm like one of those like, I'm like a cool ass nerd. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, ain't like it's cool to get that type of. These companies should fuck with me. Yeah. Because people don't really think that you could be as cool as me and do shit like that. Yeah. In my opinion. That's my humble opinion. So it's like we all grew up on it.
Like you gotta be a weeb or something to
and it's like, as much as I loved anime growing up, I have a hard time keeping up with it now. Yeah. But stuff like that, like I love Nintendo. I love the nostalgia of it. Okay. Yeah. I'm at the point right now where it's like when it comes to playing games, it's not like I'm looking for new shit. I'm going back and buying remasters of the shit I grew up with. Like it's kind of like one of those things paying homage to childhood and just remembering what was so get that full 360.
I like that. For me, actually, I feel like I'm more into like new games because I like to be more immersed. I feel like.
What are you playing? Elden Ring?
Like I have Elden Ring for sure. My favorite game is still like Last of Us.
Yeah, I know that game.
Last of Us Part 2 takes place in Seattle. like they did such a good job of like everything's like torn down. Like you're
It
like
looks
at
crazy.
yeah. So
Yo,
I
I
like
look at YouTube videos where they do the side by side comparisons.
yeah.
Yeah, same with Infamous. You remember playing that game?
Yeah.
Another Seattle
Infamous.
game.
I like those type of games where you're very immersed, and if it's in Seattle, it's even better.
Yeah.
And like I think, I have VR and I like VR, but that sometimes gets nauseous and a little too in your head. So
Yeah.
I don't know if I feel more immersed in VR versus just having a handset. To be
Yeah, I
honest.
like controllers, yo. I can't fuck with like I have friends who are like PC gamers. You know how PC gamers
Yeah.
are devout. Yo, we're the master race. You know how they are.
Spend like thousands of dollars on their PC.
Yeah,
and shit.
PC fascism and shit. And I'd be like, yo, I'm gonna want to play this shit on a keyboard. You
Yeah.
know, like I grew up with PlayStation, GameCube, Xbox, shit like that. Like, but as far as immersive games, like that's why I still, I'll smoke a joint to the face, put Skyrim on first person,
Okay.
and I'm in there. I got a pretty decent TV. I got blackout curtains, and I could just, I'm in there, and then like tons of RPGs. And for like things like Last of Us or Elden Ring, I don't have one of those systems. So when I make beats or I'm writing, sometimes I have it on. I have the long plays.
Yeah.
Going in the background of other people playing it on mute.
Hell yeah.
So
That makes sense. I was lucky because I guess PlayStation 5s are still hard to get right now.
Yeah, they are.
I got mine like last Halloween, like on Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
There was like I got a random notification. They were like on Google. It was like PS5 restock, and I happened to look right when someone had dropped that article and go to the right place at the exact time.
That's not the first time I heard that story.
Yeah.
Yo. It's like that. It's hard to get those shits.
But but the gaming companies know that they're hard to get. So like
price gouging.
Fucking insane.
But there's an issue going on with Intel chips.
Yeah.
It's I don't know what this shit. We don't got to get too deep into it, but it's like, yo, we don't even got the chips. Like,
yeah,
is the Terminator revolution not gonna happen now? You can't even get a PS5. Like, do I have to worry about them anymore?
I have friends who believe in the microchip stuff and fucking the COVID. I don't know, but I don't think I believe in that. But,
oh yeah, we don't got to get into that. They're gonna put the warning on the video. You know how if you type anything about the C word on your story, you get the surgeon warning. So we could just avoid that just for search engine optimization. But let's be logical.
You're big into SEO then, huh?
You got to understand it.
Yeah.
You do need to have a certain understanding of search engine. And I think the thing with a lot of people who are super talented is that, so when I took my shot and flunked out of community college just because I wasn't taking it like serious.
I feel that. I went for 30 minutes and I decided, I literally I met all my teachers and I was like, this isn't for me. And
well, you knew.
Yeah.
I wish I didn't waste that much fucking time. But there was a year, the second year of it, well, the third semester, it was 3 semesters, right? The third year of it, I was like, I'm not going for any fucking major, like this isn't going to pan out.
Yeah.
So the last year, I took a whole bunch of unrelated shit. I took marketing, I took film, and, I had to take public speaking as an elective, even though I aced that shit. Like, I never really had any issues with, like, getting on stages with people. But these are things that indirectly help my career.
Yeah.
So when you think of marketing, a lot of times there's talented artists who have great projects, but they don't take the time to market.
Mm-hmm.
They need to learn things about search engine optimization.
Yeah.
You need to, every once in a while, I'll get on like an incognito window just to Google my name. Just because like, how you have your shit and it's already searched in, you have your things, just to see how it might appear to somebody.
That's a good point. I've never done that.
Just to see what the order of events are, like what's just like if somebody was to look me up, where's their starting point? How far do we have to search to see my most recent article?
Mm-hmm.
And these are things that you got to keep in mind,
Yeah.
So
do you ever think about how to get verified on Instagram? Because I hear like there's so many different ways. Some people are like, you need 5 or 6 articles and something on YouTube or something, right?
As somebody who's recently verified,
hell yeah, I'm
just gonna say you do need a lot of press.
Okay.
There's ways to go above it. It's wild. So like, I think that there's somebody who, it's really weird, because if you think about, you don't know where your music travels to.
Mm-hmm.
There can be somebody, I had a recent experience, there can be somebody working for a company who's a fan of your music.
Mm-hmm.
Like I ended up on a Spotify playlist, a pretty big one, independently too. And it's just like, my only way to gauge it is that there's somebody in that office who might be familiar with me.
Yeah.
You can't plan for these kind of things, you know? So, You know, nobody's ever. I'm so recently verified, like not even a week yet.
Congrats, my guy.
Yeah, thank you. You know, like it's nothing crazy. It's like if it does feel like officiated, you know, but it doesn't. It's not a life changing thing. But
You can slide into actresses' DMs now or something, though, right?
that's a fact. My girl will get mad, but I might try. Nah, I'm just fucking. Yo, but other than that though, it's like if nobody's like really asked me, but I would just say the best way to do it is to just hustle enough that you have a decent amount of press.
Yeah.
You know, just keep. And that's not one of those things where it's like I don't have any PR, I don't have anything like that, but it's just like I have such a constant pace that I'm fortunate enough to always be getting mentioned.
Yeah.
So if you just constantly stay in the press, like you just might wake up to it. Not stay in the press, but just stay at it, you know?
Was it a like were there like certain presses that were bigger than others? Like was it Seattle press or was it like Source or what was it?
The big one might be Spin.
Okay.
Spin wrote an article about me, but you know, every once in a while I do get love from Seattle Times.
Yeah.
You know, so Seattle Times is one of those. KEXP, people who are other verified, reputable sources.
Got it.
Can't really just be your friend's blog.
Yeah.
You know, but those are the things you can't account for. Like, there's a magazine, Wire Magazine.
Yeah.
I'm in the back of the magazine. You know, as a music, I can't plan for that type of shit. You know, so it's just like somebody told me a long time ago. It's like the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't always feel that way. And I'm sure, you know, you do tons of interviews, you know, like, so it's like, but over time, there's certain factors that start to conspire for you.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that I feel like being verified is a part of that, just being 10 years in the game and just, you know, like,
yeah,
you know,
I feel like, I haven't seen a podcast channel be verified yet. Like on Instagram, like some of my favorite podcasts have like millions of followers but aren't verified. So I'm like, I want to be one of those podcast channels that are verified.
But you know why it'll happen is because younger and younger people are getting entry level positions at some of these companies. So there might be somebody coming up or somebody who's fucking with your podcast that just through their own separate life, they might end up working at Instagram next year in a position where they're verifying people. These are just the things you can't account for, you know? There's younger and younger people starting to work for Twitter. And, you know, we live in Seattle. There's tons of tech companies. You don't know who might be working at the Twitter campus down in Fremont. That might be like, yo, I love Seattle hip hop. Let me check out this interview. Yeah. NAST podcast, they interviewed blank, 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 blank. Yep, put in a word. Yeah. You know, so I think that's just kind of what it comes to when, you know, old guards are heading out. And there's all these younger kids who are coming through and then the new generations and like there's easily at the consistency that you're working at. It's not crazy to say that NAST podcast will eventually be verified for whatever it means, you know, but I think it's doable.
I do got to say, I do have an article in Lyrical Lemonade.
So I
think
got
that's
one of those
pretty
too.
dope. Hey, there we go.
A couple years ago. But yeah, you know, that's one of those sources that's a verified, reputable source that when you start having to put together that list of your press, even for like, you know, I don't have a Wikipedia page, but when people start going out on a limb to make Wikipedia pages for you, they have to cite sources. Yeah. And those are those type of things that are necessary to get those type of things made. So,
dude, that's what I love about podcasts so much. They're just like time capsules and like you get to really know about someone.
Yeah. I watch them all. I listen to them. I watch them, you know, so like I clean my room to them.
Like, did you watch, you probably saw the Kendrick Lamar, The Heart Part 5. Yeah. At the very end where he's in the perspective of Nipsey Hussle, he's like, have my kids watch my old interviews, you know, like thinking about that. Like if your kids or your family can eventually like watch all that stuff.
It's the truth.
Like, because I podcast so much, I feel like I'd be down to be AI eventually. Like if they make like an AI version of me or something.
You upload the conscious?
Because there's enough. Actually, I don't know. That's a good. Yeah.
So some transhumanism?
But I don't know, because I was talking to my friend about that the other day, about immortality will probably be being uploaded versus like actually being in your same body. Like, ooh, have you seen Altered Carbon on Netflix?
I've heard of it.
You need to watch.
I need to see. I have a homie who was super not into it. He's actually very against it, but he's always talking about like the transhumanist agenda. Yeah. And you know, to be clear, transhumanism is like, you know, the topic of uploading consciousness and taking us into like, you know, that's where you start getting into things like the metaverse, where you're gonna buy like a virtual Nike jersey on the Ethereum blockchain, or like. But yeah, I mean, yo, if you could automate the process for you to fulfill other stuff, I wouldn't be bad at you.
But there's enough. You've probably done enough interviews. You've release enough projects.
Yeah.
And I've talked so much on a podcast, someone could probably like recreate both of us.
They do that shit for Tupac albums. If
Yeah.
he's not alive. But I heard that, you know, they could type in something and be like, yo, let's make this in Tupac's voice. We got these Tupac lyrics.
Yeah. Like what if somewhere down the road they end up making like another NAST and AJ Suede episode, but we're both actually not there. And it's just like from your lyrics and from the previous conversations we've had.
Who controls the direction of the conversation though? You know, it's like I don't think an AI at this point can
just have a fluid, fun conversation.
But the critical thinking element, you know, the moment that it does get to that point, we're in trouble first and foremost, you know. But like for them to ask questions based on the newest project, certain things require you to physically, you know, be there. You know what I'm saying? But it's nothing's out of the realm of possibility, especially the way shit is just moving super fast.
What about that Google guy that said that AI had sentience? Did you
They
hear
definitely
about that?
do. I heard about that shit. He got fired.
Yeah.
Yo, but it's like, you ever seen Eagle Eye?
Uh-uh.
It's a Shia LaBeouf movie from back in the day, and it's like he gets like a phone call and somebody's like, go to this location, go, and it's just AI fucking with him the whole time.
Oh shit.
And it's like a giant like Orwellian 1984 styled eye in the sky that's just using everything that we have electronically to just like monitor us and like communicate with us, and then it just goes sentient and just starts fucking shit up. And like if it gets down to it, yo, we got all the predictive programming. You got Cyberdyne Systems, you got Boston Dynamics, you know, Boston Robotics.
Yeah.
Boston Robotics is making all these crazy AI
dogs and stuff.
robots that are doing front flips, and like, yo, we can't go one-on-one with these shits. Like, I don't know, yo. It's we just gotta take it a day at a time though. We gotta worry about the robots after we figure out what some of these humans are doing.
Yeah, but
you know what I'm saying?
Why do we push the future like that if we've already made so many books and movies about it? Like we know what's gonna happen.
But you know the concept of predictive programming. It's like whereas Hollywood introduces. So allegedly, if you go down the rabbit hole, you know, if you do a military movie in Hollywood, you need to get the military to sign off. They're gonna provide you with the equipment, with all that, and it's like basically like product placement.
Yeah.
So then you got predictive programming, right? And you have multiple movies where, like, if you see the Twin Towers prior to 9/11, they're burning in some way or another. The Super Mario movie, the live-action Super Mario movie is one of those movies. Twin Towers burning down. Like, if they show it on TV, which they don't anymore, they cut that part out. You know, there's a couple different movies. So just to say that certain things get demonstrated by Hollywood, like, every once in a while.
Yeah.
You know, just so, like, this isn't even tinfoil hat shit. This is like, you know, if you go down the rabbit hole and you start looking at some of these things, you have certain movies that introduce these ideas. God forbid something like this happens, we're not too surprised. We could be like, oh, jokingly, this is the day after tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, this is, so who knows, yo? We've seen so much shit. We've been seeing Terminator since the 80s. We got Eagle Eye. We got iRobot.
Yeah. Tesla looks
Blade
close.
Runner. Replicants.
Yeah.
You know?
Tesla's looking more and more like the iRobot cars, you know what I mean?
Yeah. You know, if anything, though, I wouldn't mind, like, the Fifth Element being real.
Ooh.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I fuck with that type of sci-fi. Like, my cousin's a big Blade Runner stan, and it's like, I would hate to live in that fucking society.
What about Total Recall?
Yo, Total Recall. Is that the one with the game?
That's the one where, like, Arnold... They
Yeah, I seen the remake. I didn't see
with
the Arnold version.
with Colin Farrell, yeah.
I seen the remake. That was cool. I mean...
But it ended up being fucked up, I guess.
It's one of those big budget movies that don't really have too much other else, like a Michael Bay type of film.
Yeah.
You know?
They did that with Vanilla Sky, too. I don't know why Vanilla Sky got so much hate.
I've never seen that one. That's Tom Cruise,
Yeah,
right?
I liked that one. It was really similar to Total Recall.
Word.
I like that one, though. But, yeah, that's a predictive programming.
Yeah, predictive programming.
Oh, so that's what they do with Disney. That's supposedly what happens in Disney all the time. Like, where, like, they show little kids, like, Bambi's mom getting killed and things like that.
There's a
whole
wild rabbit hole of
Yeah.
Disney subliminal programming too, of like shit like The Borrowers. You ever seen the movie The Borrowers? There's like one scene that like they're on like a tin car and out the window there's like a demon looking lady with her titties out. It sounds crazy, yo.
Yeah.
There's a lot
in Disney?
of yeah, yo. There's like one scene in The Lion King where I think Simba, I don't know if this is the exact scene. I haven't seen The Lion King in a while. But I think Simba's talking to Mufasa in the sky.
Okay.
Do you remember this sound familiar?
Yeah.
And then the stars spell sex.
Oh, shit.
You know, like, I don't know if this is just giant coincidences or people
funny.
playing pranks, but there's like tons of old school YouTube rabbit holes of Disney just being perverted.
Dang.
You know, like the Little Mermaid's getting married at the wedding, and then the priest has a Woody. Like little shit like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, but who knows, yo? Fantasia, you ever heard of something called Monarch Mind Control?
No, what's that?
So Monarch,
I like
yo,
Fantasia though. Fantasia
they were
is
saying
dope.
that Fantasia is like one of the biggest subliminal programming movies for like any kid to watch. Like just the way that
Wow.
the imagery works, that it's like at work on kids' minds.
It was hella
I seen
racist.
it in IMAX. What expunge on that? Which part do you? I haven't.
So Fantasia, like when was the example? They made like mammies and stuff.
Oh
And, like there was
yeah,
like they made a lot of the cartoons very, or like they did
that's like Dumbo with the crows,
yeah,
with Sambo crows.
or they did there's this one scene where there's like they just made like a lot of the animals in one of the chapters in the
Mm-hmm. They were
like
shucking and jiving. And
yeah,
doing
and
all
then
that.
they made like these like one animals look like super Asian guys, and they had like their hair. It was actual hair, but it looked
Yeah,
like one of those
sun
straw hats.
Yeah,
You know
I
what
do. I
mean?
remember that. Matter of fact, word.
So they did stuff like that, but
Yeah.
I was like, shit, this is kind of a little
Yo,
racist.
the thing about Monarch Mind Control though is, well, I won't get too deep into it because I don't want to spread misinformation.
Yeah, fair
But it's
enough.
like one of those types of things that it's worth checking out. And they say that Fantasia is like one of the biggest examples of it.
Yeah,
There's this movie by Stanley Kubrick called Eyes Wide Shut.
I haven't seen it, if I know that movie. Is it a good movie?
It's a good movie, yo.
I
And
need to check it out.
surprisingly, it's a Christmas movie
Mm.
on top of that. But it's about like I watched one video essay that led into another video essay about Monarch Mind Control. And it was talking about how in Eyes Wide Shut, like you would use Monarch Mind Control to like, I don't want to go. I feel like I'm saying some Alex Jones type
But
shit.
no, I have a conspiracy podcast. I have two
Yeah,
podcasts.
get me on there.
You got to
Yeah.
come on that one.
I might have to also bring my homie Christ Cooper if you don't mind.
Yeah.
He's super. He has a crazy library, and anything he speaks comes from a place of source. So it'd be good to have him on there. But yo, get me on there another time.
Yeah.
I'll do the research
Okay,
to
yeah,
make
yeah.
sure I'm not spreading misinformation. You know.
Yeah, we make
But-
sure, as me and my co-host, and we have the same initials. So
Mhm.
it's kind of a play on words, but it's called the BBC podcast. And it's
Yeah.
Blake Burton and Brian Barnett Conspiracies. And
Yo, get me on there.
Yeah,
For sure.
dude.
If you have me, I'll be honored, bro. I'll do some research and we could really go down the rabbit hole, you know?
hell yeah.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? You got this the vinyl releasing. You're doing like a 30-day run for that.
So yeah, the vinyl, we're figuring out the rest of the vinyl. I shot a video yesterday to help promote that for an older single that came off that vinyl. I got a show tonight with it'll be long. This will air long after, but me doing Armand, Blake Anthony, Waffles, my homie Wolf Tone.
Oh, where is this at?
This is at Cafe Racer tonight. Feel free to come through, yo.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's at doors at 8. And Remember Face is also playing. Didn't want to leave you guys out. These are people I've been playing shows with as long as I lived in Seattle. They tossed me tons of alley-oops. This is the first show I ever got asked to throw. So I wanted to return the favor, so
yeah.
it's a great lineup. After that, I got another vinyl coming out with another record label that, like we were talking about, I have my digital, but we can still partner with other record labels for my project called 100 Year Darkness, produced by Small Professor out of Philadelphia. And working on a self-produced project, hopefully to get that out. That's going to be the first release on Know What I Mean Incorporated.
Mhm.
And hopefully I might get that out August-ish. And then, whatever comes with that. I'm just always going to be either, if I'm not rapping, I'm making beats. If I'm not making beats, I'm editing a video. If I'm not editing a video, I'm writing, so just more of that.
There we go.
You know what I'm saying?
So you were also talking about like eventually wanting your own record label.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about that for myself too, like a podcast network and a record label, two different things. But what type of record label would you want? Would it be solely for hip hop, or would it be mixed genres, or have you ever thought
I'll
about
probably
that?
mix it up, so there's a couple boutique record labels that I was able to get familiar with just being a student of the game. And it's just really about, when you have a record label kind of like a Crane City, it's more about curation.
Yeah.
So I would constantly, but I think what I'm going to do for my record label is really going to be my releases, but I'm going to produce for other people from time to time. So it'll be like my stuff, my self-produced stuff, but also every once in a while I'm going to like scout talent and think about like artists I fuck with, and then like do a project with them on my beats and digitally distribute it. But then, it's still their music. You could still go out and seek Crane City and release your vinyls, but I produced it, so I'm gonna have to get my, we're just gonna split it down the middle. It's nothing up front, but I think I'm really just gonna use it as a way to curate artists over my production, including myself.
Hell yeah. And I also feel like you're in a total different area of hip hop than I've interviewed, really. Like I've interviewed Blake, of course, but I'd like to have you like shout out some like artists you think I should look out for and other people should look out for in the Seattle area.
Okay, so in Seattle, it's like anybody you really see me collaborating with. So on this vinyl that we're dropping with Crane City, I have a bonus album of remixes. So it's the same album, but I had people I fuck with go and redo the beats, and then I have a posse cut at the end. And on the posse cut is like Greg Cypher's on the posse cut. Blake is on the Blake Anthony's on the posse cut. Astral Trap from Tacoma. I don't know if you fuck with him, but you know he stays really consistent. You know, Do Normal. Just all these people that I've been grinding with since I got here. You know, but of course, as far as like people I know you didn't ask, but like just to name it off the top of the head, I do want to eventually get some shit done with the OGs, like Nacho-ish. Nacho might be doable though, you know, like you fuck with Blue Sky Black Death?
Yeah.
So my last album was the first album I dropped this year was produced by Televangel.
What are you doing tomorrow?
Tomorrow I'm around. What's good?
Maybe you can come say hi to Nacho.
I might pop up. I'll know I'm in the area. But so Blue Sky Black Death did Exalted and Lord of the Flies, which is 10 years old today, by the way.
Wow.
Not to age you, bro. But so Televangel does my shit. And we're going to start working on the sequel in August. I'm going to go down to Portland, like late August. And hopefully we might be able to get Nacho on that shit, you know. But, and then other than that, you know, Shabazz.
Yeah.
Yeah, you feel me? Shout outs to OC Notes, though, too. You feel me?
Hell yeah.
But, yeah.
And is there any final advice you'd like to give to artists, creators, influencers?
Yo, just don't ever stop. And when you spend you know, obviously, I'm not gonna say spend a year, but whatever time you spend, whatever precious time you spend on a project, spend that same amount trying to promote it. Don't you know, it's hard to keep that consistency, a balance between spamming people and promoting music. That's important, you know. Keep finding new creative ways to promote your music. If you hit a wall for an album, you know, shoot a video for a single, create an email list. Keep finding new ways to roll that music out. And don't give up on yourself so quickly. When you drop that project until you're ready for the next one, even if you space it out, keep on promoting. Keep shooting. Don't get discouraged. And only do this shit if you really love it. Because if you don't, you're going to get discouraged, yo. Love is going to make you persist. You know?
There we go. This has been, what's the easiest way for people to reach you?
Everything AJ Suede on Google. AJSUEDE, you know? But, you know, shout out to NAST Podcast for having me. Thank you, Blake.
Hell yeah.
Appreciate you.
It's been the NAST Podcast with
AJ Suede, the Suede God, Darth Swader in the building.
And we did it.